All right, Anna, thanks for joining us this morning, and it's awesome to have a chance to get to speak with you.
No, thanks for having me. It's interesting to revisit my uni days.
And you didn't graduate that long ago, right? So give us first a sense of when you graduated and what you're doing now, and then we'll get a bit more into your background.
Yeah, sure. So I graduated in 2017 or 2018. It was 2018. I graduated in 2018. I finished my content about halfway through 2018 and started working almost like a month afterwards. And then I had the graduation ceremony once I was already about 3 months into working full time. So it was a bit of a ride in that sense. So it really wasn't that long ago, but it feels like a while ago.
Yeah, no, I can. And so you're working as an account manager at Cisco now. Give us a couple of sentences on what that involves. What does your day-to-day work look like?
So it's really it's probably a mix of being very proactive, trying to like reach out to customers, work out what their challenges are, work out, how we can develop solutions that fit that problem set. And there's a bit of reactive work as well, like trying to work out how to fix issues, trying to make sure that, things are flowing through it, as well as just managing a business that you do in sales and making sure that you're hitting a number, that you've got a bit of commentary around what is going on in your business and being able to essentially report that back up the chain.
So you're problem solving with customers of Cisco's products. Do you work? I mean, Cisco has a lot of different things. It's one of the big technology companies in the world. Are you working with a particular product set or across?
No. So we have we have a massive portfolio. It is essentially a bunch of businesses, in some ways almost like glued together. Cisco has this amazing acquisition strategy. So almost every year we introduce new businesses and new product sets to our portfolio. Sometimes they are integrated into existing products and they become under that Cisco brand. And sometimes, we continue to run them as separate businesses, but as an account manager, you kind of have to be, a master of all of these different products, or, at least be able to dip your toe in, because you need to be able to position them to customers and essentially leverage your specialists as required. So I've got people who might help me if I need to position a solution around collaboration and get some, video endpoints, get some software. Maybe there's a customer looking to transition off hardware and they want to look at cloud calling. So we have a acquisition from about 2017 called Broadsoft, which is the back end of a lot of cloud calling solutions, and we've developed our own off the back of that. So it's really about trying to work out the best product fits within the portfolio and then leverage specialists to kind of drill a bit further down, as well as technical resources, being engineers.
Well, that's cool, because we talk a lot in entrepreneurship about product market fit or product problem fit, to product design for usually an existing need in the market. And it sounds like what you're doing a lot of is listening to a customer, the particular business challenge they're having, whether it's a collaboration sort of organizational challenge or it's a more technical challenge, and then recommending a product based on how you understand their need. Is that right?
Yeah, recommending a product and also recommending a solution. So there's a lot of moving parts. As well as our whole portfolio, we have a series of partners that offer a variety of different services on top. So ensuring that you have the right fit for a customer, you have a solution that's going to meet their needs in terms of the product, and a partner that can implement, and you're able to offer it commercially at a price point that's viable for them. That's all the considerations you kind of need to take into account when you're positioning something back to a customer.
Yeah, it's interesting that the notion of a customer success manager, which you might have encountered this term, it seems to have grown a lot.
It's very popular.
Yeah.
Customer success, customer experience. They've essentially renamed an organization within Cisco Customer Experience as of 1 or 2 years ago now.
Yeah. I did when I was doing my PhD sort of 8 years ago. In fact, some of the people that were graduates of this program, Steve Hopkins, who we last spoke to, worked at Yammer, another one, Ross Hill. They were the first employees of Yammer, which you probably know Yammer, before they were acquired by Microsoft. And they had these jobs, customer success managers, and no one knew what the hell it was, right? But it certainly wasn't just a matter of recommending the product. It was basically a kind of coaching and education piece for clients around how to use the product more effectively, that then got into their own organizational dynamics, because Yammer, as you know, is this Facebook-like product for inside an enterprise. And it only works if people actually change their practices towards sharing information, towards being more transparent, towards putting out questions and accepting answers from all over the company, not just the standard traditional management hierarchy. And so that involves significant behavior change as well as just installing an app, right? And I'm imagining you're encountering and negotiating these sort of problems too.
Yeah, definitely. So Cisco's really an interesting case in that respect, because we are a very hardware oriented company, traditionally, but like all businesses, the value and where our focus is into the future is going to be around software. And how you create value added software is you've got to train people up to actually utilize it properly and see the value out of it in order to keep resubscribing. It's not like, just having a router there and it does its job, and it's actually, if you're selling additional like software packets for thousands of dollars in enterprise, you really have to make sure they're seeing the value out of it, and you need adoption training to do that. So it's definitely a focus that Cisco's started to pay more attention to, or an area they've started to pay more attention to.
And I didn't expect us to spend so long on this, but I think this is a helpful point that you make to think about the business model transition with software around cloud towards recurring revenue models, towards software as a service, means that it's a great, nothing like having recurring revenue if you're a business, right? So you're not just selling these things once and you don't care what happens to them. You actually need people to every year go through their cost structure and go, yep, that is worth investing this much again, continuing to pay the subscription fee. So just like most of us are on Netflix and things now, enterprise has the same set of considerations. And that means you need to help them learn how to use it. It's no good just selling them a power saw if they don't know what to do with it, right? So there's this whole, it pushes the enterprises towards these relational forms of education, coaching, and just feeling good about using the software as well, So super interesting.
Yeah.
So just give us a couple of thoughts on, well, tell us a bit about you, like where you grew up, and particularly what made you elect to study entrepreneurship.
All right. So I grew up in country New South Wales, and then I went to boarding school in Sydney. And then I actually started uni a couple of times straight out of school. So the first degree I started was a psychology degree, and I got about half a year into that, and I was living out in the country again. I had actually gone there because my boyfriend at the time was studying there. So I was like, we're going to stay together. It's going to be great. So I worked out pretty soon I wasn't happy at that university. And then started a general arts degree and decided pretty soon that wasn't for me either. So after that, I entered the workforce and I was working in supply chain. And then I had decided marketing was going to be a really good fit because it had that psychology element. So I was going to study marketing for a while. And when it kind of came down to it, I ended up working in marketing for a little while, and I thought maybe that's not what I want to do around brand. So I saw entrepreneurship as a bit more, looking at a business holistically and looking at all those different elements and how it works together as a system. So that's, I guess, what drew me towards it, opposed to marketing, which I thought, I was a bit worried it would get to maybe brand advertising product focus. And I thought entrepreneurship was really the opportunity to look at all these interesting things going on and how you build something from the start and all these different elements that go into a business.
Well, that's interesting that you had a few different goes at university. I did the same in undergrad. I started one thing, dropped out, worked as a musician, started another thing. And although you can look your history can look a little checkered on your CV, or the downside, might be that people think you don't know what you're doing, but I think there's a lot of upside, which is you get to see, you get to try a few different things. And usually I find when students have tried something else and they've come to the degree, their undergrad, after some of this experience, they're actually a lot more committed, that they know why they're there, they're more committed to finishing and doing well. So it sounds like it was a positive likely for you.
Oh, definitely. It's such a different experience when you're going to uni because, you know, it's something you've decided you need to or want to do compared to when you're going to uni because it's expected of you, or you finish school, or you don't know what else you want to do. So I definitely wouldn't recommend someone go straight from high school into uni. I don't know. I think there are some people who are absolutely know what they want to do. They're really passionate. Of course, they're an exception, I think. But most people, it's probably worth just traveling. It's probably worth entering the workforce, you know, giving a couple of things a go, or even just being open to changing midway through. I know I was pretty fortunate with my degree. Like I mentioned, I finished early. And part of the reason I was able to finish early, I actually got a whole year of study shaved off because I got recognized for a minor as well as electives. So, you know, I think RMIT are very good about being flexible like that, and you can definitely, you know, utilize those subjects elsewhere even if you don't finish that degree. So I think it's worthwhile being open to change and seeing what you're actually going to be really passionate about and what's going to make you feel driven, or, you know, what's going to get you committed to it.
Yeah. So I liked your point about you were attracted to entrepreneurship because you like this idea of looking at a business holistically as a system rather than just one piece of it within marketing. Entrepreneurs have to think about marketing clearly, but they also have to think about logistics, you know, supply chains and business models and cost structures and all this stuff. What are some highlights of the program that you remember, or lowlights? You're welcome to share, but what are some of the things that stood out about the experience, and did it deliver on that promise, if you like, of helping you understand how business systems fit together?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. So I had a pretty interesting time at RMIT as well, because obviously I didn't have to worry about my minor. I didn't have to worry about electives. I got credit for that, I think, the first semester I was there. So I knew I only had about 2 years worth of subjects to do, and they were all my core subjects and all my capstone units for entrepreneurship. So I only really know those subjects, but within that I knew I really wanted to go to Vietnam as well and spend a semester at RMIT Vietnam. So I had to be quite smart about which subjects I could do over there because they didn't offer all the major units. So my first year, second semester, I did a couple of, I think, second or third year entrepreneurship subjects. And that was interesting. So I did one subject called entrepreneurship. And that was a really around kind of reaching out to businesses, finding a problem and working towards developing a solution for the problem that the business had presented to you. And we had a member of our group who was very involved in social enterprises, and we were kind of connected with these two people who wanted to start this social network for good. And it was so interesting, not really having a developed background in, you know, different business models around SaaS, around the advertising model of Facebook, and kind of meeting these two people who had this massive dream and the things that they would say. It was I remember feeling very pushed out of my comfort zone because there were these two people who had this entire language of their own. And it was, as we kind of went through entrepreneurship, I became more familiar with that sort of language and that sort of, you know, these grandiose goals and this anything's possible. But it was really interesting being exposed to that first year of university, and just how they would, you know, work to connect with people, how they would spend their time. It was very all-encompassing. So I think that was a really interesting first exposure. And then as a counterpoint, in my second year, I did the fast track program.
Mm-hmm.
So that was as an alternative to, I think, new venture creation. It was a bit of a selective stream. So I ended up working with a couple of accountants, surprisingly enough, on a solution for ANZ around the problem of, young people saving. So that was a very different way of looking at it. That was a lot, probably more firmer, a lot more grounded, like what's going to work in the context of the business, what makes sense for them, what's on brand for them, what data do they already have available. So I think there was a pretty broad set of experiences that I managed to have. And then going to Vietnam and doing entrepreneurship subjects in Vietnam was a different experience as well. So
interesting. You mentioned I'm glad you mentioned entrepreneurship, because that's what I teach now. It's called driving innovation in organizations. So I think I must have taken over just after you did that. But you also mentioned Fast Track. What's interesting to me is they're both the examples where you're actually working entrepreneurially, but for a different company. Did you, when you came into the program, did you, and now that you're at Cisco, do you, have aspirations to start your own enterprise? Do you see yourself as a business founder, or you actually find more comfort, you feel your skill set's better working inside companies?
I think it's a really challenging one. I think that drive that you need to be a business owner, and I guess also a distinction that I became cognizant of later is there's, small business owners, and then there's these entrepreneurs that want to start these like high growth startups, and they're different breeds of human, really. Would I want to start a business one day? Maybe. I think there would be some great flexibility in owning and running a business. Do I have that internal locus to kind of go like, I want to build the next Facebook, or I want to build something that's going to scale indefinitely? I don't know. I think it's a really interesting dichotomy that I think the entrepreneurship program kind of treads, because there is that element of innovation, that is the element of like focusing around the mythology around the modern entrepreneur, who are these high growth startups, and then just the traditional, what's a solid business model that, is going to essentially pay your income for the rest of your life. So I think yes and no. I like having the security of being employed at the moment. I have things that I want to do, and when I explore, and being employed gives you a lot of freedom in that respect as well, because it gives you that security. So I think it's just weighing up what's actually just best suited for you at the time, and what you actually have the energy and drive to do, and the resources, because definitely starting a business it can put you in a vulnerable position, I believe. So, kind of see how you go.
It sounds like a wise set of reflections. I think it is very important that we to make this distinction between ambitious and technology focused but high growth entrepreneurs and what they're trying to do. And as you said, it's like fish and fowl compared to someone that just wants to start a barbershop or a cafe, or even like a little consultancy, a boutique consultancy with a few friends that, deliver something that they know about. Very, very different, and psychologically it seems to demand different things of people. And it's sometimes amusing to me when students come in like in first year and they say, oh, why'd you do this course? And I say, because I don't want to make money for other people. I want freedom. I want to make all the money for myself. And I go, wow, I mean, that's not usually what happens when I talk to people that have actually gone down this path, right? That have started their own enterprises. They're working longer hours, they're earning less money. Going on holidays is very freaking difficult. Like the sort of dream of laptop by the pool in Bali is much more myth than reality. What about, you seem to have navigated very well the transition from study to work. You said you're at Cisco within a month, blue chip company. Many students, I'm sure, would love to work at a place like Cisco. How did you set that up? I know you've been a little modest that you didn't just do Fast Track, but you won the Deloitte Prize, right, for excellence. You must have done very well in Fast Track. but had you set up the relationship with Cisco earlier? Tell us about that. The kind of I don't want to say murky, but I think for many students, it's puzzling how to do this. You know, do you just send CVs once you graduate to these companies? I generally say no. You've got to set these relationships up early. So tell us about your experience here.
See, I was quite lucky. So I guess what I'd really probably highlight, and I know what you're getting at, it's the front door versus the back door. I actually got in the front door. So I applied to a whole lot of grad programs when I finished. I'm quite lucky that my grades were above the threshold, which is not the highest bar. If you can kind of stumble your way through the online assessments and get in the room, that's just about showing kind of your personality, who you are in a really, short period of time. It's really not about saying you're the best person from the job. And if you do kind of want one piece of advice going through the front door and trying to stand out, definitely ask questions and definitely treat it as a two-way relationship. It's not just about them picking you and going like, you're the best at this, you're the best fit. It's about you picking them. So I think if you can communicate that through asking questions, showing you're actually interested, showing that you're trying to work out if they're the right fit for you, I think it comes a lot across more strong than if you're just, repeating what is it, like the star format answers back to them that you've rehearsed in your bedroom. I don't think that really sells or positions yourself well as a potential, employee. So like I said, I applied for a whole bunch. I ended up getting a few different interviews, and I actually ended up with 3 offers. So one was at a bank, one was actually at Uber, which was, I think, pretty interesting. So I had a lot of trouble deciding between all 3. However, before I even started actually getting the interviews and applying, I was trying to reach out to different people who I knew. One program I did when I was at RMIT was the Hacker Exchange program, which is run by 2 ex-bank employees, one who used to be a mentor for Fast Track. And they're absolutely brilliant, and they're trying to build up, similar to, guess what RMIT is doing with building up a network of people that you can leverage. They've tried to achieve the same thing. So they set me up with a few different people, and they essentially just said, meet them, have a conversation with them. And they essentially said, look, it's hard to get in the front door sometimes, but if you can meet those people, have a chat, just see how you get along, see how you feel. Those are the people who can probably give you the guidance about what you need on your CV, what to mention, what maybe not to mention, and they're the people who can probably put it into the right person's hands if the opportunity comes up. So I definitely not rule out either way. The front door can be hard, but yeah.
Let's dwell on that just for a second. So you're saying you participated in this hacker exchange. Was that in San Francisco, or was that?
Yeah, that was the San Francisco one.
Yeah. So this is you basically going into a hackathon like thing, right? Building, developing an idea, creating a prototype. Yeah. So similar to what you do in Fast Track, but compressed. And I'm assuming, given what you said about that, your advice is participating in these things can open doors that you can't necessarily anticipate, right? That they can, sure, you get the experience of doing it, but often, not always, but often you meet other potential collaborators, friends, later colleagues, or you expose yourself to mentors that can give you advice. Kind of point 1, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But I think you said something really interesting too about this distinction between the front door, back door. It's not so much about, becoming mates with someone and then them giving you a job. That's not what I meant anyway about the distinction. But it sounds like even though you went in quote, the front door, as in you applied through a grad program, you went through they looked at your CV, they looked at your grade point average, you did the online test, you got into a formal interview. It sounds like you had some good advice by people that were more experienced about what to highlight, how to show up or how to perform in those rooms. And that's the point I often try and illustrate to students. It's because I grew up thinking like networking and stuff was somehow a bit dodgy. That was for, the right thing to do was to do the test and respond to the ad in the newspaper. And this idea of going out and using, you know, your dad's mates, blah, 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 was kind of dodgy. But it's not the way I look at it now. I look at it as in, you know, we have exposure to knowledge that can help us achieve what we want to achieve, right? And you can get that on the internet, you can get that from a book, or you can get that through the tailored advice of someone that you know, or that and that might be someone you randomly meet, you know, on a train or a plane or something. But it can also be a bit more strategic, you know, if you admire people, if you encounter somebody and you think that person, like she's got something that I think is really interesting and I want to know more about. I'm always encouraging students to say, it's perfectly fine to write them an email saying, can I ask you a couple of questions? Can I pick your brain? Can we have a coffee? I mean, people do that to me and I almost always say yes, you know. So I think approaching the world of work, thinking a little more laterally in this way, that you have a kind of portfolio of connections that are not going to necessarily do anything. They're not going to get you the job, but they can give you advice that can help you perform better in the formal context. Is that what happened for you?
Yeah, I definitely think that was, you know, was a big influence going on those programs and just interacting with different people and how it changed the way I thought about what I wanted. And I guess what to stress around networking is it's not a transactional relationship. You're not trying to get something out of people. You don't have to like give them something in return. It can just be this conversation. It can just be, you know, it's just what it is. It's obviously not a massive investment of time. It's always good to be gracious and offer to buy someone a coffee if they're going to spend 15 minutes, half an hour with you. But it's just what it is. And like you said, most people, I think when they're in a position, they're quite interested. When you're a student, that was something that was really, I think, highlighted during the Hacker Exchange and during some other programs while at uni. People are quite interested and quite happy to give you the time of day when you're a student and, you know, you're in those formative years, because they understand that, you know, you're still learning and you want to know more. So I think definitely leverage that while you can, because I think it's very different as a professional where they maybe think, oh, this person just wants a job or something. It's just, it's a very, people are definitely, I think, more inclined when you're a student to give you that time and that freedom to make mistakes as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's two things. If I get like a random request on LinkedIn, I always say this, you know, or an email of someone I don't know, the first thing you're trying to do is this a scam, or is this worth spending any time away from my current job, right? And so what I say to students, but or really anyone, is you need a frame of reference for why this person is contacting me. And one of the best ways to do that is an invitation, an introduction from someone you know. You know, like my response rate will go up remarkably if someone says, "Hey, I'm introducing you to Anna. You know, she's doing this. I think you guys would have a lot, some insight. So have a conversation." I almost always do it. If random head, you know, contacts me saying I want to talk to you, I'm like, But if they say something like, "Look, I'm a student of entrepreneurship. It doesn't have to be at RMIT. It could be anywhere, and I'm trying to understand how this thing works better," or "I notice you know, one of your startups had something to do with blockchain," and it gives a kind of frame of reference where I go, all right, yeah, I'm into helping students. You know, I was a student once. I basically have only got to where I am, you know, not that it's some lofty height, but through people sometimes being kind, offering me some advice, you know, giving me some feedback or some ideas I wouldn't have had. So I think it activates that module in people's brain around reciprocity and understanding. A lot of people like helping other people, right? Especially if they, you know, and when you see someone being appreciative, to your point, it can be through buying them a coffee, but it can just be by saying, wow, I hadn't thought about it that way. That's really helpful. I'm going to put that into practice. That is a form of gift back where you're showing them that you appreciate the time and effort. And a lot of people, that's all they want, because you don't always get that in your day. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't get a lot of thank yous sometimes, right? Maybe you do, but I know teaching can feel like a thankless task at times because you're putting all this energy in, and it's just lovely when students write at the end of the semester. I've got a few this week saying, "Hey, I really enjoyed this course. Like, it was helpful. Thank you." You know, it's a big tick. So, very final few comments. So if you were to give students now in the program from first to third year some advice on what to be thinking about, where to direct their energy, especially through this lens of increasing their probability for success from the study to work transition, what do you recommend they be doing?
I think it's a really hard one because it's so dependent on the individual. I think really assessing what it is you think you want and trying to learn more about that is really critical. And also not necessarily closing yourself off to opportunities. Like I know a lot of the grad programs don't list entrepreneurship as kind of one of the fields that they're looking for graduates from. Definitely don't let that limit you. Know your value, know your strengths, have a bit of an idea of what you want to do, and just try to search for opportunity active. And if you know a path that you want to go down, that's great. But if you want to just investigate, I think take this time to investigate. You're not going to get the same amount of time just to focus on what you want to do for the rest of your life as you are at university, because there are just so many doors open to you. So that would be my two commentaries. Like, think about what you want to do and actively investigate, whether that's talking to people, whether that's applying to jobs. Actively search and try to work out what your priorities are and where you want to be after you finish.
That's great advice in a general sense. I can't help but want to ask you one more question, given what you said. Something before, when you talked about getting in the room, of the grad programs and doing the interviews, how did you negotiate this issue between, so you've got an entrepreneurship degree, and many companies might either not really know what that is or go, well, why do you want to come work for a major company? Isn't entrepreneurship about starting your own thing? How did you bridge that gap between perception and discuss the skills you've developed and your experience?
Yeah, it's a kind of an advantage and a disadvantage. The disadvantage is they don't know what it is, and the advantage is they don't know what it is. So you can kind of tailor what the story is around what you've studied and what you've gained from what you've studied to what they feel is relevant. And you get that information from talking to them, reading the job descriptions carefully. Every job description is going to have the word innovation in it. Half of them will have the word entrepreneurial in it, creativity, creative problem solving. That's what you talk to. It's like they don't care that you can do a balance sheet or not if you're going into a grad program and it's not for accounting. So don't stress too much on the specific those specific skill sets that you get from one of those traditional fields. And really just let your intelligence shine, let your creativity shine. Show them that you think about how you think about problems, how you utilize critical problem solving. That's what you can talk to as a student of entrepreneurship. So that's what you talk to. Yeah,
cool. And can you give us a reason? I meant to ask you why you chose Cisco over, say, Uber or the bank in the end.
It was really tricky. It was so tricky. I had to ask a few different people, and to be honest, I still don't know if I made the right decision sometimes, because it was just a position I honestly wasn't expecting. Yeah. I'm really happy at Cisco. It's an amazing company, just given the history, and I'm really happy to continue working there for a while. But it's a really interesting thing. It's just when you're starting out in your career, you need to, I guess, try different things. And I think trying sales has taught me a lot in a really short period of time. So I'm eager to just keep learning and keep along the path. And I'm honestly not sure where I'll end up in another 5-10 years, but we'll just keep ticking along and see where I end up.
Well, it sounds like you're in a great place to have some options. So thanks for taking this time. And wonderful to speak to you. And I think students will really appreciate this. So watch it. So are you on Twitter or anything if students want to kind of follow what you're doing?
No, I'm on LinkedIn and that's about it. I'm not a Twitter person, but yeah, so if anyone does want to reach out and have a coffee, I'm more than happy to have a chat. Even talking about prepping for grad programs or even checking over a CV. Like,
well, that's a really kind offer. That's what I was trying to give a softball invitation to offer, but without putting you on the spot, and say, yeah, awesome. So people can reach out to you if they've got any questions.
Yeah,
Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your Friday, Anna.
Okay, thank you so much.